We may not be thinking about breaking up actively, but we're just, fine. Would you settle for fine in your fitness? When you did, you hired a coach and kicked your own ass and made a radical transformation. Do you settle for fine in your business? When we do, we wake up, hopefully, and go, this isn't good enough.
Welcome to the Thought Leader Revolution with Nikki Ballou. Join the revolution. There's never been a better time in history to speak your truth, find your freedom, and make your fortune. Each week, we interview the world's top thought leaders and learn the secrets of how they built a 6 to 7 figure practice. This episode has been brought to you by eCircleacademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. I'm your host, Nikki Ballou, and boy, do we have an exciting guest for you today. Today's guest and I have become dear friends. She's my sister from another mister. We met at the Transformational Leadership Council semi-annual event in Montebello, Quebec. She is one of the world's leading thought leaders on intimacy and sex inside of a committed relationship, and she also happens to be a successful thought leader to boot. I am speaking, of course, of none other than the one, the only, the legendary Cheryl Fraser. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Oh, I just love that. I'm going to get a snippet of that. I'm going to play it anytime I'm just feeling a little unfocused. I'm going to have Nikki going, "You're the best, girl. You're the best." I love it.
Good to have you here. So Cheryl,
Yes,
you
sir.
and I, we've spent some time together. We know each other, and I'm excited to have you on the show, but my audience doesn't know who you are yet, and they really want to learn from you. But before they can open themselves up to you, they got to get to know, how'd you become the great Cheryl Fraser? So tell us your backstory.
Well, it's sort of the quick version, which then will become a slightly more lengthy version, is imagine that a Buddhist monk and a sex therapist had a baby. That's kind of me, but it doesn't answer the question, how the heck did I get there? So going way back, I was a tender girl on Vancouver Island in a little logging town, and I was deeply, passionately, extremely in a very horny way at the age of about 10, deeply in love with Sean Cassidy, the world's sexiest hardy boy on television. If you don't know, oh, you missed out. Plus, he was a pop singer. And I honestly believe, Nikki, slightly chagrined, I honestly believe that Sean Cassidy, the rock star, the TV personality, the Teen Beat magazine posters all over my wall, that he would come find me in my logging town on Vancouver Island, sweep me off my feet, take me to Beverly Hills, where I was going to do what now? I was going to live happily ever after. Spoiler alert, didn't happen. But I did mention him once on, what's that? I don't know, Ariana Huffington's show thing, her whatever. And I did get a shout out from his team because I talked about being in love with Sean Cassidy and she mentioned it. But anyway, what does that have to do with anything? It has to do with no matter how intelligent we are, no matter how sophisticated and big ass grown up we are, we tend to have a subconscious soulmate template. And it tends to be a very flawed idea, and everything from romance comedies to romance fiction, which, not counting porn, is the number one selling medium of books in the world, and porn and everything else in between. We have a really screwed up idea that someone is supposed to make us happy ever after. And someone is supposed to bring to us some magical missing thing that's going to keep us happy. And then after about 18 months, after we fall in love and the hunt and the chase for the masculine and the being chased and being seduced and being cherished for the feminine slow down, we make a really stupid connection that's incorrect, which is, oh, you must not be my soulmate, because it's not super easy, fun, and horny anymore. So I start with this little girl, desperate for love, desperate for romance, to feel complete, to have great conversations. And then, Sean didn't show up, and I had to date mere mortal boys and men because I'm heterosexual in this lifetime so far. And I was really interested in why people suffer and why we aren't happier, particularly those of us who grew up in privileged and safe areas. I know you did not in your background, but I grew up in middle-class Canada. It was very safe, very privileged. Why is there so much anxiety? Why is there so much despair, lack of meaning? Why are people reasonably unhappy in their romantic relationships far too much of the time? All of that, boom, I go the traditional route. I'm a brainiac. I've got a really good brain. I got accepted to med school. won the gold medal for the top PhD student at my university and all this stuff. 13 years of university, got accepted to Harvard Med School for my postdoc. I turned them down to go to an even better school for my postdoc in clinical psychology and sex therapy. And here's the thing, Nikki. That's, I worked hard. It's a feather in my cap. But at the end of 13 years of university, my friend, I could not simply answer the question, why do people suffer? Why aren't we happier? I could write a dissertation on it, but I couldn't answer it simply, which is where the Buddhist part comes in. Instead of getting a tenure track professorship job at an Ivy League university, which is what I was more or less being groomed for as an academic, I got a backpack and I went to India and Nepal for 8 months trying to figure out the meaning of life. Studying with the Dalai Lama, studying with other Tibetan teachers, meditation retreats, sleeping with rats without meaning to in cheap, sleazy guest houses, which was all I could afford. And when I heard the teachings of the Buddha, whether you're a religious person, a secular person, an agnostic person, the teachings of Buddhist psychology or Buddhist philosophy are the most concise explanation I've ever come across as to why we suffer. So that's where I started chasing the Buddhist trail, and I've been studying that and teaching it ever since. I've done multiple 4-month retreats, some of them in the winter in Ontario in a cabin with no heat except the wood I chopped, just studying the vagaries and demons and delights of the human mind by meditating 12 hours a day, completely off grid with no touch with the outside world. So it's a weird and wonderful journey, my friend, but that gives you a few tidbits. What bring us here, and what I ended up doing in my career at private practice, saw a lot of couples, saw a lot of cops, worked with a lot of men, and eventually I wanted to bring together the simplicity, which I can review in a moment if people like, of the teachings of Buddhist thought leadership around why we suffer and what to do about it with couples and sex therapy. And I wrote a book called Buddha's Bedroom, which created a bit of controversy in the Buddhist community because Buddhists aren't supposed to have sex, which is completely stupid because obviously, unless you're a celibate monk or nun by choice, Buddhists have sex. How do we be a spiritual being in a mundane animal body? How do we bring love to our partner without expecting you to make me happy all the time? Sean Cassidy, Nikki Ballou, my own husband, etc. So there's a little bit of backstory.
That is awesome and full of fire and passion. And it begs the question, do people suffer? So what's the answer?
I cannot claim to have figured this out myself, but allegedly the historical Buddha did. And whether that's partly myth and partly fact, I don't care. The teachings are golden. These are the 4 noble truths. In the book, I boil them down. I call them the 4 facts of life. That's a little easier languaging for a lot of us. The first one is everything changes. Everything's impermanent. Now, we know that. We know right now there's hair follicles and skin cells falling off you and I. Our bodies are literally changing in these microseconds. I'm looking out at the beautiful Pacific Ocean out my window into a mountain over there. It's changing. Leaves are falling. Animals are zooming through. Everything changes. This beautiful house I'm in that my brother's award-winning company built for me, cracks, settling. We know everything changes. Our health changes. We know we're mortal. We know we're going to die. The first truth, I challenge anybody to challenge that everything changes. Okay, I think we can accept that for now. The second truth, and that's the truth of suffering, but bear with me, that everything changes. The second truth says the cause of suffering is that everything changes, but actually it's not. Everything changes is the first noble truth. The second one, the second fact of life says you suffer when you don't accept that things change. Well, let's flesh that out a little bit. Right now, as you and I speak, presumably we have a vehicle. I'm a big fan of the Miata sports car. I've got a sweet little burgundy Miata sitting out in the carport right now. You've got whatever vehicle you like, probably, I don't know, Harley motorcycle, something like that, sitting outside. And while we're recording this beautiful conversation together, let's say someone steals each of our vehicles. Right? So after this, whenever, today, later, you go to take out the trash because you're a good man, you notice your freaking motorcycle's gone. I notice my Miata's gone, and there's enough glass that you know it was a smash and grab. It's been stolen. Okay, that's an event. What is it? First fact of life, it's a change. But it's a change we don't like. The second noble truth says the change is not what makes you suffer. It is how you react to the change that's the problem. We suffer when we want reality to be different than it is. So I don't want my Miata stolen. You don't want your fictional or maybe real Harley Lowrider stolen. But our suffering is in our mind, Nikki and or Cheryl's reaction to the change. That's where the suffering lives. I think I'm upset because my car's gone. I'm actually upset if I allow myself to be because my mind is not liking this change. Damn it. That's the second truth. So the first is the truth of suffering, and the second is the cause of suffering. So the change isn't the cause. If you're following me, the cause is I'm hanging on to wanting it to be different. So I'm the agent of my own suffering, not the thief, not the car, none of it. It's Cheryl's reaction to the change that is where the suffering lays. Now, if that was all that the Buddha had to teach, it'd be pretty damn depressing. Everything changes, life's a bitch, then you die. Blah. Luckily, there's two more. So the cause of suffering is I want it to be different. Well, you're a smart guy. So the solution, noble truth number 3, is how do we stop suffering? Accept what is. Let go of wanting it to be different momentarily. I know you're not a passive man. I am not a passive woman. We will fight for causes. We will fight to make the world a better place. This third noble truth is sometimes misinterpreted as complacency or fatalism. Like, there's child sex trafficking. That's terrible, but there's nothing I can do about it. That's not it at all. But the suffering I would feel about something as horrific as what I've just named is because I'm refusing to accept the truth of that it's happening, and I'm fighting against it. And I'm wasting all my energy and anger and rage and hurt and grief, which doesn't allow me to take positive action to create a change from a place of compassion. That's pretty deep. We need to go further another time. But to review, everything changes. Yep. Some changes I don't like. Yep. When I don't like them, I suffer. The flip side of that, of course, is some changes I love. If we go outside and there's a messenger at our door saying, hey, you just won the lottery, here's $5 million, that's a change we like. Here's the trick. The positive changes we chase, we want them. We try to run from shiny object to make us happy, which is a very vulnerable place to place your happiness. So the way to stop suffering is to accept what is radically. If it's crappy, bad news, cancer diagnosis, someone you loved has cheated on you and walked out and don't want to be your partner anymore, can you accept the truth of that wholly? Let go of wanting it to be different. Arguably, you're not going to suffer at all. And then from that place, you could choose to take wholesome, appropriate, compassionate action to change the situation or heal yourself from the situation. And the fourth noble truth is easier said than done. Because in a sentence, if you want to be a fully awake person with no suffering, just let go. I haven't been able to do that yet successfully, so the Buddha gave us a prescription, like many good wisdom teachings. The fourth noble truth tells you to work on your mind, work on your behavior, work on your integrity, work on your speech. Do various things to help you cling less to, if only I get that client and hit that dollar amount, then I'll be happy. And instead to release the clinging to that being the source of your happiness and put it in a sort of a colloquial way to enjoy the journey, run your business, your life, your love with integrity, and let go of needing it to come out a certain way in order to be happy.
This is pretty deep. And
Yeah.
a lot of this reminds me of a program I did years ago called the Landmark Forum. And there was an exercise in the Landmark Forum about choosing. And I won't go through it because I don't want to give it away for someone who hasn't done the program, but
Right.
it basically describes these truths, but in Landmarkian language.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of truth to what you say. So how does this apply in the context of a relationship?
Right. I think rather beautifully, because when I'm upset with my sweetheart, who you met, terrific guy, not perfect like me, but terrific. When I'm upset with him, I'm upset because I'm not getting what I want, or I'm getting something I don't want. It's really the only two choices. But I think I'm upset because my beloved, who has, and he publicly talks about this, or I wouldn't share it, he has very, very severe ADD. And he's the best-hearted guy, hard worker, shirt off the back, would do anything for you, except remember the shit on the shopping list. He'll write it down. He'll put it on his phone. He will go, Nikki, to the checkout. He likes to shop and I don't. So blessings for me. He really likes going grocery shopping. So he does it. He'll be at the checkout, double check his check off with a marker list and his phone, and still miss 2 out of 10 items. The brain is just, with all the props, with all the excellent work he's done, it's going to happen. For years, we've been together about 12, 13 years now. We met when we were late 40s. For years, I would just be effectively pissed off, annoyed, stressed, disappointed that he hadn't brought home the 2 important items that are on the damn list that I gave you and that you checked and everything else. And I was suffering. Suffering's a big word. We could call it irritable in this case, disappointed, vaguely unhappy. Suffering doesn't have to be the big S. It's the tiny, tiny little glitches of inconvenience as well. And the truth of it is, in relationship, I'm not suffering because my beloved brought home 8 out of the 10 items I was asking for or expecting. I'm suffering because my mind doesn't like it. I'm suffering because Cheryl's mind is saying, this is a change I don't want. So I have a choice. It's such a beautiful, elegant thing, and it's hard to do, and I still fail all the time. I have a choice to say, that's my sweetie. That's his thing. He doesn't do it on purpose. He tries hard to manage it. He's much better with it than he used to be. But the fact is, the way that beautiful brain works, he's going to miss stuff a fair bit. And because my brain doesn't miss stuff, and I would bring home 11 of the 10 items, that's just a different brain. And when I can go, that's my sweetie, instead of, oh, for God's sake, sweetie, you did it again. You're happy or not happy in your mind. That does not mean I'm saying your partner can be a lazy so-and-so and never change. I work from the left and from the right, so to speak, with couples. I want each of us to take way more responsibility for being a great partner, for being a great lover, for stepping up, for not waiting for Sean Cassidy to bring me my happiness and dance the right dance of the exact steps I want, for me to become an agent of change in my relationship. That's all on me. To work with my own stories about Nikki's so lazy and he did this or he's not romantic enough, that those are my stories and I'm responsible for them. But I also very much want to work with the other person to do the same thing. That's the first thing. Each of us owning our own stuff. What can I bring to you? Where am I letting you and us down? How can I be a better partner, a better lover? But then also working as a team, you and your partner. I've met your incredible partner. You're a lucky guy, baby. Don't let that one go. But working together to say, where are we clashing? Where are we mismatching? Where maybe are we not identifying a core need that I don't feel is being met? And the work does lie partly transactionally between you and I. For you to understand that thing really helps me feel safe, connected, and whole. And it's not very important to you, and it's not intuitively where you go, but you love and you cherish and you edify me and us, and therefore you're willing to say, I can do some of that. I wouldn't have naturally done it. I don't need that in the same way, but I see this lights you up and helps you be more full and more whole, right? Whether that's, and I'm going to be a redneck's daughter and a bit of a man's woman, which I can be, whether that's your guy really, really loves a blowjob now and then, and it's not your number one favorite thing, but you love them and it edifies them and it feels good to bring pleasure. Whether you're a woman, it really lights her up if you make a fuss of her birthday, or you make a fuss of your anniversary, or you make a fuss of Valentine's Day, which is a ridiculous, stupid Hallmark holiday. But you know what it also is, Nikki? It's just a cultural reminder. Yeah, I'm going to light you up. I'm going to do something special and romantic and out of the box. Not because I think Hallmark holiday of some massacre that happened in Europe or something. It's really where it comes from. I don't know. It's dumb, but it's just a nice cultural reminder every February to not necessarily on the 14th, but get your butt off your complacent laziness and treat her the way you did when you were wooing her, when you made all that effort.
Again, I want to unpack some of this, because there's a lot of truth to this. As men, we put a lot of effort into wooing our woman. Then once we get her, that effort kind of stops. And I'm guilty of this myself. And, one of the mentors that I had in getting into a relationship with Teresa is a man named Owen Williams. He actually lives on Vancouver Island right now. And he said to me when I was wooing her, he said, "You need to be careful. You're coming on really strong." And I go, "Yeah, I'm Persian. That's what we do." He said,
Yeah, have you met me?
Yeah, yeah, right. He said, "That's true, but this ain't gonna last forever. You're gonna slow this down, and you don't know what the impact of you withdrawing some of this intensity is gonna be on your woman. And I assure you, it will not be impact free." And at the time, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, whatever, buddy," right? But he was right. He was right, because that can't last forever. It's artificial. You can't live a life where I put everything on hold just to woo her and write poems for her and sleep half an hour in 5 days. It's just not sustainable, right?
Yeah.
But there needs to go some effort into wooing on an ongoing basis, and it took me a while to really understand that.
Yeah. Falling in love is one of the greatest drugs in the world. There's some functional MRI studies that show that the light up pattern of the brain when we're in a falling in love or lust phase, whether it lasts for 3 days or a lifetime, it mimics obsessive compulsive disorder. And any of us who've been through it, which probably almost everybody or everybody listening has, maybe more than once, we are obsessed. Like, we can't stop thinking about them. We're in like total turn on, even if we haven't had a first kiss. There's like flushes of sexual arousal. We are locked and loaded, including women, but men even more for the hunt in a more classical heterosexual, because I am LGBT, everybody friendly, love everybody who loves anyone, and want to be really clear about that. We're using heterosexist language here, which is fine, but I want to quantify that to me, it's whoever you love, however you love, you're my people. But we're obsessed. Madly in love is not incorrect. I personally think that the falling in love phase, usually 6 to 18 months of like, wow, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest human roller coasters on the planet. I freaking love it. It's amazing to know I am the most fascinating person in your world. You want to know my depth and breadth. You're attracted to me and vice versa. It's amazing. But it's so unfortunate, disheartening, and frankly, really immature for us to go, and now I don't feel that way anymore. It's like, what are you doing about it? You and I are agreeing, we don't think, even with our massive intensity and willingness, we can create and sustain that wildness of our falling in love stage every day. And our businesses would suffer, our life would suffer, our health would suffer. But what I love to teach, and the phrase I use, Nikki, is fall in love all over again with the one you're already with. Now, that might sound a little trite, but it can be as simple as, oh yeah, birthday, anniversary, silly February 14th. I'm going to woo my partner, and this goes both ways. I'm going to surprise my partner. So if it's not every day so easy to do in the falling in love and lust phase, we can choose to say, we're being complacent. We're what I call marriage incorporated or relationship incorporated, where you're running your relationship hopefully pretty well, but kind of like a business, especially if you share a home, whether or not you do, if you share kids, whether or not you do, but the mortgage is getting paid and the dog's getting to the vet to get their worming medication. And, the kids are getting picked up from hockey. We're Canadian, from hockey practice on time. And we're doing really well on that. But in so many ages and phases of life, we're kind of on parallel tracks, and we may love each other. We may not be looking to have an affair actively. We may not be thinking about breaking up actively, but we're just, fine. Would you settle for fine in your fitness? When you did, you hired a coach and kicked your own ass and made a radical transformation about a year ago, right? Do you settle for fine in your business? When we do, we wake up, hopefully, and go, this isn't good enough. Why the heck are we so tranced into thinking a okay relationship and I love you, but I'm not really in love with you anymore, but we're good. We're good parents. We're good. Why does that feel like it's enough? Because everyone and culture tends to tell us, oh, that's just normal. That's just normal. Like in longer term relationship, which might only be 3, 4, 5 years, not decades, you settle into, the kind of coasting stage. That is accurate. But accurate things doesn't mean they need to be that way. Credit card debt in North America, accurate. Obesity and diabetes epidemics in North America, accurate. Statistically typical, I don't want to call them normal because they can be changed. So a mediocre, decent kind of relationship or marriage or long-term commitment is typical on the bell curve. The majority of people fall into it. But that doesn't mean we should say it's okay and all we should aspire to. Complacency is a killer of love and fun and joy and horniness and sex drive.
Typical versus normal is a really good distinction to make. I'm wondering if you can just go deeper into that.
Yeah, sure. So the way I'm using the language, there's other ways to language it that would be equally effective, is something that is really common, we call normal. So it's normal to, your sweetie's kind of okay and you love them. And if they got cancer, you'd be horrified, but you're not really that into them. You'd rather watch your TV shows in different rooms and yada, yada. And that's just normal, right? Because it's statistically typical. Well, let's call it statistically typical then, like obesity or diabetes or credit card debt. It doesn't mean we should say normal, implying that's the way it should be. That's where it gets tricky, right? It's typical. Are you typical? Do you want to be typical if the things were typical in is poor health, crappy finances, and a mediocre love affair? Hell no. And when we see we're typical in any of those or other important things, hopefully, this is a thought leader podcast. This is a growth-oriented podcast. Yeah. Every man, woman, and them they listening has at least an inkling of an urge inside them to be bigger and greater. And you know what? Bigger and greater might simply and profoundly mean happier. Happier. How many kids, when you ask what you want to be when you grow up, say, I want to be happy? They have these other North American goals or immigrant goals. Is that bad? Not all around, but I would love to hear a kid boldly stand up in kindergarten or grade 6 and when asked what they want to be when they grow up, say, I'm not entirely sure, but I want to be happy and I want to give and serve. I don't know what it looks like. So, on just because it's typical, the thrill can't last forever. Well, it usually doesn't because we don't co-create, reignite, and make the effort to create a new sense of thrill and connection and novelty. It's not easy, and it won't be the same. It won't be a carbon copy. God, am I old? Carbon copy? You probably don't remember what that is. It won't be a carbon copy of the crazy lust and projection and biochemical and caveman woman thing that happened in the first 6 to 18 months. But at year 24, you can create some of those feelings through an experience, through a shared adventure, through trying harder. Hell, in the sexual light-up realm, do the old trope that sounds like a hell of a lot of fun to me. Meet at a bar and pretend you're strangers. Pick each other up. Like, just bring play, bring a charge there. How do we create novelty with someone who is no longer new to us?
That's a great question.
I don't have a quick answer, because if I gave a quick answer, it would be a trope. It would be go on more dates, and all of which I teach pretty significantly. But I base it in what I call the passion triangle. That's the core of my teachings. I have a 3-month immersion couples program I take people through. Everybody's doing the same thing each week. They don't have to interact with each other. It's strictly confidential, but I coach every other week and I answer questions. Also, they can be anonymous and confidential. And the 3 sides to creating a great relationship, I call intimacy. And here I'm not using intimacy as a euphemism for sexuality. That's a fine way to use the word, but I'm not meaning it like, oh, we were intimate last night. I'm meaning psychological communication, depth, connection, intimacy. Everything from how do you fight? Do you fight fair or do you not know how to fight fair? Do you fight using some of the 4 divorce predictor behaviors of heavy personal criticism, of contempt, the number 1 killer in some research out of the Gottman Institute originally, showing that when you express contempt for your partner, where you put them down as lesser than you, let's say you and I are a couple, Nikki, and let's say we're at a dinner party with 4 other couples. And one of the couples, the male, these are all heterosexual couples, and the other, another male is saying, I'm so proud of my lady. She just got this major promotion at work, and she's rocking it, and I'm just so freaking proud of her. And you turn to me and go, yeah, it must be nice to have a wife who pulls her weight around the finances. Like, right? That's contempt. I know you wouldn't do that, but thanks for being my fall guy. When we put our partner down in our mind or in our words, that's contempt. And it's one of the biggest predictors if it's not handled and fixed. It can be handled and fixed. I used to be contemptuous. It's something I had to watch out for. I had to really work on. But the intimacy side of what I call the passion triangle, the 3 fundamental couple skills for people to learn and build on, is everything: communication, how we handle conflict, how we repair, how we fight fair, how we learn to actually frickin' understand each other's point of view, even when we don't agree with it, even when we aren't going to agree with it. But for you and I to create closeness and trust, if I want to move to Timbuktu and you very much want to stay where we live, make our home and have our family, we may not be able to resolve that. But the first bunch of conversations need to be about understanding why you think and feel that way, not necessarily agreeing. We saw a fellow speak in our shared experience a week or so ago at that incredible event we were at. A fellow called James Timon, I think, right? And he's a peace activist and been to Baghdad and met Saddam Hussein. And he phrased it differently than I do, but it's a beautiful way to put it. He talked about, I don't know, maybe I love you. Yeah. I teach a very similar thing to my couples using different language, which is, I don't understand or know if you're right or that I agree with your views, but I care about you. Please help me understand who you are. Couples suck at that. I call it the other side of the clock technique. I don't know where my clock is, but I'll briefly describe it because it's one of the 2 things I teach that couples over and over and over give me the most positive feedback on. I want to give it to your people right now. Imagine you're sitting in front of me with your sweetheart, Nikki, and there's a clock I have. I took it away because it was ticking. I didn't want it ticking in the background. It's a small clock I got as a gift. And I turn to you, partner A, you're on my couch over there when I used to work with people one-on-one before I did the big program. And I say, okay, Nikki, I want you to look at this object. I want you to pretend you're a Martian so you don't know what a clock is, okay? You're going to describe it using any words you want except the word clock so that I, who am up in the Martian spaceship and cannot see the object, understand what your experience is. You're like, okay, stupid question, but it's gold. It looks to be about 4 by 6 centimeters. It seems to have 6 or 8 sides. It's sort of shiny, and it has these sticks on there, like Roman numerals. I'm like, great, you get an A+, you're a genius. I turn to your partner. I flip the clock around. I say to him or her, same question, object, describe it to the Martian who can't see it so they understand your experience. They go, okay, it's a black thing. It seems to have like a kickstand, a sticky out bit that maybe it rests on. It's got a couple black circles or dials on it, and it's sort of a matte black finish. I say, great, A+, you're a genius. And then I say, which one of you is right? And they laugh because they say either, well, neither of us is right, or we're both right, which is a very simple verbal, and when I have the clock, I illustrate a visual example of a very powerful concept, which I call the other side of the clock technique, which is Nikki and I are different. Whether we're gay, straight, best friends, brothers who grew up in the exact same environment, we are different from this other person. And if I can't see what you are seeing and experiencing, we're going to spend the rest of our life having this argument. How fun is this? It's black. It's got circles, you idiot. It's got a handle. No, it doesn't. It's gold. It's got Roman numerals. What are you talking about? It's not gold. I don't know what you mean from Roman numerals. It's black. It's got this kickstand. That's what we do for the rest of our relationship, our business relationship, our love relationship. We're probably both thinking about our ex-husbands and wives right now, all of us listening. Love is about understanding you, whether or not I agree. So I teach couples in the intimacy part, tons of communication. I know it's the C word. It kind of sucks. It's hard freaking work, but I have too much integrity to make $1 billion selling the Great Sex in 30 Days program. Because if I can't help people with the first and second, we haven't got to yet, sides of this work, then the sex part, which is the third part, ain't going to go very far. So that's a lot about intimacy for now, but communication, apologies, atonement if I'm in affair recovery, because about 15% of couples who come to my program are post-affair or post-other big betrayal, financial, etc. How do they move forward? The second one, to our Valentine's Day, to our wooing, to our how easy it is in the beginning conversation we've been having, I call thrill. How do we create thrill? So we've touched on that and given a few examples already in our conversation today. And I'm giving you homework, buddy. I know you're tired because we just got home a few days ago from this big event, been hitting the ground running. But then in the next 3 days, we're coming up on a weekend here. In the next 3 days, I want you to do a wooing of your lady. Small or big, an hour or a day, something special light her up. That's part of thrill. It's a lot more than that. And I've got a beautiful story about my grandparents I'd like to tell you in a little bit in our conversation here before we wrap up. That's who taught me thrill could last forever. The third part of the passion triangle, drum roll, please, we're getting there, I call sensuality. And that's everything from holding hands or cuddling to the greatest, raw, most amazing hang off the rafters monkey sex you've ever had, to tantric orgasms, to simple lovemaking, to snuggling naked, to do you kiss hello, do you kiss goodbye, and everything in between. Now we get to some grim statistics that are not quoted much because the clinical research, I'm a research scientist amongst other things, is very poor. If you Google how often does the average couple in a relationship make love or have sex, you're going to get estimates from once a week to twice a week. Bullshit. I wish those were accurate. That would be terrific. These are poor sample sizes. They group the 20-year-olds in with the 60-year-olds. Half the people lie. Much more accurate. Their data isn't there to support it yet because people aren't doing good surveys yet. I'd say 30 to 40% of couples in a long-term relationship, and I can define that as more than 2, 3, 4 years together, are not making love at all or very rarely. Every time I share that, and I share it on every appearance I ever get a chance to have a microphone, an audience, or a person sitting next to me on an airplane who's curious about this and asks me about it, I always share 30 to 40% of couples are in a sexless or low sex relationship. Low sex defined different definitions, but one clinical definition is 6 or fewer times a year. So making love, less than once every 2 months or so. The exhales of relief, the looks in the eyes, the light bulb going on of people thinking, oh God, we're normal. We're not the only ones. Because couples don't talk about this. They don't sit around and go, how often do you guys make love now that you've been together 10 years or 30 years? And if they do talk about it, most people are too embarrassed to admit it. So there's this isolating sense that we're the only ones not lit up in the bedroom or not making love at all. So the third aspect of a great romantic relationship, chosen relationship, is your sensual life. But again, I use the word sensual, not sexual, because I work with a good chunk of couples. Probably 25 to 35% of any group I take through. I take about 100 couples at a time once a year through this 3-month program. And one of their biggest complaints is we haven't been sexual in 4 years, in 6 years, in 8 years, in 10 years. Let me tell you the story of a couple I worked with 4 years ago. These are their real names, and it's a bit confusing because their name's also Cheryl with a C. They've given me permission to share the story. They share it on video on my webpage. Norm and Cheryl. They were in their early 70s when they found me through a Facebook ad and a little video sending them to my free masterclass. And they decided to sign up and do the 3-month program. They had not made love or been sexual since their 40s, 30 decades without making love. There'd been multiple affairs in the earlier part of their relationship, ugly fighting. They were coexisting. And she later told me that, Cheryl, for 30 years, we changed each of us separately in the walk-in closet because we couldn't even see each other naked. They did the program. They worked so freaking hard, and it sounds unbelievable, and it just touches my heart. They created a sensual life together then after 30 years in their early 70s, where they have a sensual date together once every 6 days. They then went on to renew their vows in Mexico a month or 2 later, and they're still in my ongoing membership program now as a pillar of what's possible. So I want to give everybody listening who's sexually dissatisfied, maybe one or the other of you doesn't want to make love, maybe you've got performance issues from aging, childbirth, hormones, old trauma, psychological blocks. There isn't a quick fix to low desire, but when you learn the first 2 parts of the triangle and the foundation of your relationship to move into tackling your sexuality together is a very brave and precious thing to do. And it is possible to move into a new phase of sexuality together. Thank goodness, because otherwise, we go sexless or with our masturbation and solo sexual life, which is fine. It's a one lovely way to interact with our sexuality. But if we're choosing partnership and we're attempting and we desire to choose monogamy, it's okay if you don't, if that's consensual between you and your partner. But if we're choosing to pursue monogamy and we're not making love with our sweetheart, all we got is our hand. That's right. And that's even if we take it away, Nikki, from like sex is great because it feels good, which it for sure as freak is. as a spiritual, emotional connection at times, as a way to let go and be wild and crazy and play with dominance and submission in just a sweet way, like tie me up, baby, and vice versa, as a way to get rid of frustration in a healthy way when we come together in passion, or to just have a simple little sexual encounter. And if our bodies aren't cooperating, maybe it doesn't lead to orgasm for one or both of us, but we still did something that we're not doing with other people. It has so many impacts on a couple, and so many individuals or couples downplay it as, yeah, well, it's not that important. I'm like, if you gave an hour a week more mindfully to your sensual life, or 2 or 3. It's a minimum of the hours of your relationship, your life, and everything you do. But it can be one of, if not the most impactful aspects of being alive and being together. People argue less when they make love. They're usually less contentious for a day or two, oxytocin and everything else. So if you're sexless or low sex, if you're in a partnership where you would love to have a robust or a better or some sex life and your partner's really not there, do take heart. It's not an easy fix, but it can be shifted. If you're seeking out private help, can I just do my soapbox thing real quick?
Yeah.
Be very careful. There are some good couples therapists. There's some great couples therapists with different levels of training. Almost none of them know anything about sex therapy. They can say, I see couples with no training in couples therapy. If you're certified as a psychologist, a clinical counselor, or whatever, there is no legislation in place to say, let's say I trained as an adolescent counselor and I'm really good with teenagers. I can open my private practice and say, I see couples. So first of all, find out that they know how to see couples, find out what their training is, who they studied with, and what they know. And secondly, and this one should blow everybody's mind, here's my soapbox, almost none of them will have any training in sex. So they may be very skilled at your arguing styles, your power struggles, your dynamics, getting over affair betrayal, maybe, but that involves sex too. And they may know bupkis about sex. And a lot of them won't even talk to you about your sex life. So buyer beware, get someone who, like me, is trained in both and knows what they're talking about. Thank you for giving me a soapbox.
God, it's easy to interview you because I ask you a question and then you go on and you speak in complete sentences and paragraphs with a lot of passion. You give a lot of good information. I can tell you this, there are a lot of couples, in particular, men are in a lot of sexless relationships. And here's the ugly truth. It bothers the man a lot more than it bothers the woman, seemingly. Not having sex, I can tell you myself, having been in, my current long-term relationship and, having been married before.
Sure.
There were periods where, I wanted to make love to my beloved and she seemed indifferent at best
Sure.
the prospect. And I can tell you that there's a lot of men, middle-aged men older than 45 that report the same problem. They're like, look, I love my wife, but she doesn't want to have sex and I've got needs, and I can tell you how it impacts me when my wife, my woman does not want to make love to me at the same level of desire that I have. It kills connection. It just kills it for me instantly and immediately. It's painful. It's hurtful. It makes, it has made me as a man feel less than. Like there's something wrong with me. I'm not attractive. And it's also made me really, really angry. It's brought me to the point of saying, screw this, I'm done. I want to get out of here. And of course I don't.
Yeah.
But that's what it does to a lot of men. And, there's a lot of women who don't understand how this impacts men. They just don't get it. They're like, what's the big deal? Okay. I'll have sex with them, just not now, right? And the sex then is obligatory rather than like monkey sex, as you put it, right? Like the rafters, which for a man, when your wife wants you that way and gives you that kind of sex, it's the fucking greatest thing in the world. We feel like Superman at the end of it. Superman at the end of it. And I can say this, that, you were speaking earlier about like, hey, ladies, give your man a blowjob. You may not want to all the time, but I'm like, All men vote yes for that. Yes, give us a blowjob.
Send me your thank you cards.
Yeah, there you go. Blowjobs to men are a dozen long stem red roses to women.
Yes.
That's how we feel when we get blowjobs.
Exactly.
And let me finish the thought here before you comment, because I definitely want you to comment. I believe that men ought to understand how they're behaving, how, pulling back on the wooing and saying, hey, we're married already. She got me. There's nothing more I can do. We got to that doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. It kills connection and intimacy and all that in the relationship. But I believe women got to get, when they withhold physical intimacy, when they withhold sex, that is similarly killing the relationship, killing their connection with their man. And that's not a good thing either.
No, it's great. We partly agree, and I partly don't agree with some of the kind of global statements about what men want and what women want. There's definitely some truth to it for sure. But about 40% of the couples I work with, it's the woman who's wanting more sex. And these are, heterosexual couples in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. We can go into in depth, maybe another conversation. But
I'd love to know why. That's great. I mean, that solves a lot of problems for a lot of people.
And it also, men always say, it would never happen to me. And I laugh because I don't know, they'd have to wait. But I am a woman who's always had a strong, healthy sex drive. And through my life where I've chosen serial monogamy, that's the model that works for me. I like to love the person I'm going to get naked with. I've wanted sex more than my partner, not to a huge degree, but I'm the one more like after a few days who's like, babe, it's been a while. And about 40% of the couples that seek me out, it is the woman saying he's just not that interested. Now I'm going to blow your mind because it's so important that you've said to the hetero women listening, it really can hurt a man in a lot of ways when he's not seeming to be sexually desired. It may surprise you and the male listeners to hear what it does to a woman in a heterosexual relationship when her man's a little less interested or a lot less interested in sex than her. Because think of how we were kind of brought up culturally. I'm a bit older than you, but we're similar sort of generation. I'm probably about a decade older than you. I don't know. But women were basically brought up, and boys and girls were basically brought up with this incorrect teaching, which was men are dogs and always want to stick their dick in something, and they always want sex. And women don't really like sex very much. And so if you're together with someone in a relationship and you want to have sex and you're a guy and she's a girl that says, I've got a headache, that's just kind of normal. Whether you believe that or not, it kind of soaked in a little bit, like, water into a sponge. So here, if I'm a woman who grew up kind of absorbing that, whether I believe it consciously or not, and I want to make love to my man and he's not interested, the woman's programming says men always want sex. If he doesn't want sex, it means he doesn't desire me because he's a man and they want to stick their dick in everything, which is complete horseshit and really anti-men. I don't believe that dumb statement I'm quoting, but it's a trope. So she's very personally affected that his lack of interest must be about her, that she's not attractive. It's her. Interesting that you so poignantly spoke about how personal it has been for you when your beloved doesn't seem to be sexually motivated. What I hear from a lot of men is they sure don't like it and it might annoy them, but their conditioning is sexual, but that's a chick thing. Like women don't like sex as much. So it's not so much about me, it's about her. However, each of us think about it, it is the most difficult thing for couples to talk about.
Yeah.
I often say, how do we talk about the sex you're not having? Because after the arguments, after the hurt, after the tears, after the attempts, after the you never want to, after the polarization of the negative kind where the person who wants more sex feels rejected, unappreciated, like they're badgering you, the person being asked who may have medical or psychological or all sorts of reasons or relational reasons, you're an argumentative jerk to me all day long, and now you want me to get nakedly vulnerable with you? There's so many multifactorial reasons that lead to a sexual desire disconnect that until I can help a couple unpack what those are for them, it's very difficult to move them towards a sex life that will be fun and satisfying for them. And it may be that person A is much more motivated than person B, but person B is really enjoying it again and more involved in it. That's why I teach a 3-month program, not a 3-hour program, because I wish it were easy to simply change our mind and say, you know what, sex is important. It's pleasurable a lot of the time. It has value. Just because I don't really feel like it isn't a good reason not to do it. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I teach, and people don't love it because it's not very romantic and it's not a quick fix, like a magic pill that doesn't exist. I say, think about going to the gym. Now, you're strange. I think you probably like going to the gym. And if so, I applaud you, Nikki. Most of us don't really like going to the gym. We go because it's good for us. We go because we've made a commitment to it. We know it's important. And we know overall we'll be glad we went. But I don't ever wake up and go, yeah, I get to go see my horrible trainer today. I wake up going, ugh. But I go. I get the running shoes. I get in the car. I drive to the gym. I let the trainer train me. I come home. I'm always really glad I did it. I never, well, except for some sore muscles, but I'm still always glad I did it. I kept a commitment to myself that matters. I did something that's good for me, something that was, in this case, maybe not what I wanted to do. This is not a romantic analogy, everybody. But what if you changed your thinking some of the time on having sex when you don't really feel like it to it's like going to the gym? I don't really feel like it. I know it's good for me. I know I'll be glad afterward. Because the majority of couples, if they have a sensual encounter, even if it's not TV, movie, great sex, it's okay, it's nice, they're still usually glad they made the effort. But I know we don't have much more time, but I want to get these facts out to everybody listening, because like the 30 to 40% aren't making love, the next thing I'm going to share is not shared enough, and this is based in the best in sex therapy and research and clinical, is there are 2 types of sexual desire. One is responsive desire. That's the one we're missing, that we love. That was when it was so easy to be turned on. And gosh, I would kiss my guy goodnight when we were dating, and his tongue would touch mine, and it was boom, full horniness, just spontaneous, so easily turned on. That fades at different times and different levels for different people, but it fades. There's no way all of us are walking around with as much turn on as we had in the beginning. The second type of desire is less sexy. I am sorry, don't shoot the messenger. It is responsive desire. And like the name implies, that's where I create circumstances so that I eventually get into the idea of sex and respond. It might be as simple as, we haven't made love in 3 weeks. I miss you. Let's have a shower and play with each other's nipples and soap each other up and touch each other till we're kind of in the mood. We're responding by making a mental choice to go to the gym. We're now responding, and now we're kind of turned on, and then we have shower sex or we move to the bedroom. I wish the desire I had, I met my sweetie when I was 49. We had such hot and heavy sex for the first 5-6 years. Menopause then didn't help. Another conversation for another time. But it was so easy, and we'd make love twice a day, 4 or 5 times a week, and we weren't spring chickens, and it was just a delight. That type of desire is rarely happening, partly due to biomedical menopause and andropause reasons. So we have to decide sex is important, and we believe it is. And we make time, and we schedule it, and everybody hates that. But they say it's not romantic to schedule sex. Like every Tuesday, we make sure we have naked time. I'm like, yep. You know what's less romantic? Never having sex. Fighting about the lack of sex. Not getting to the bottom of the hurt feelings. Forgetting how nice it can be to have a quickie. Or a 69. 69 is one of my prescriptions. You know why 69 is so good is you're both getting pleasure at the same time, and it's kind of lazy and not a lot of effort. Really. It's great. Find pleasure, create pleasure. I don't want, and I know you don't believe, neither of us are trying to make this sound easy. It's not easy. But if you're willing to do the work, Norm girl, 30 years, no sex. They now have a sensual encounter every 6 days. It is possible. Let's not, just because it's typical, believe that the thrill can't last forever.
Amen. Amen.
Now, I know we're over time. Can I take 3 minutes to tell the most romantic story you've ever heard about my grandparents?
Yep, and then we'll have to wrap up.
You betcha, baby. Okay, so Norman Evelyn. My granddad was born in Wales, and he was born in a Welsh coal town, and his father was the physician. So we saw firsthand the black lung, the deaths from cave-ins. It was a horrible life. My granddad was not an academic guy, so his destiny was to go down the coal mine. He wasn't going to be a physician like his dad. So he lied about his age. He got on a ship bound for Canada, and he arrived in the dead of winter in Canada, got a train to Quill Lake, Saskatchewan. got a job with a German farmer. He probably got paid $1 a week or whatever was fair at the time. Springtime comes, and it's time for the spring dance. And so he's outside the community center, and as he tells it, he's leaning against the fence with a bunch of the young bucks, and they're watching all these pretty girls in their frocks that they've been sewing all winter long, one by one entering the hall where the boys are about to go and ask them to dance. And there's pretty girl after pretty girl, and then comes my granny. And my granddad sees her, and he lights up like a Christmas tree, and he turns to the young buck next to me. He said, "Who's that?" And the young buck says, "Oh, that's Evelyn, but don't even think about it." My granddad says, "Why not?" And he says, "'Cause she's engaged to be married." And my granddad famously said, "Not for long." So he wooed her, he wed her. They moved out to BC. Through the Depression, through the Second World War, lost their first child at the age of 2 to pneumonia. Then were lucky enough to have my father a few years later, the only child that they had that lived and survived. They apparently fought like crazy when my dad was young. He said they lived in a one-room shack. Their bedroom just had a sheet in front of it, and they also made a lot of love when he was a kid. And they went through their life. Fast forward, I'm very lucky my grandparents lived to their late years. They were still in my life in my mid-30s. My grandmother became ill and died quite quickly in about 30 days. And my granddad was absolutely bereft, because this is what I'd witnessed through my childhood and young adult years. Every time my granny walked in the room, that man lit up like a Christmas tree. He called her my Evie. And he said it with that intonation, my Evie. He worshipped her with such joy and humor. And she kind of tolerated him, "Oh, Norman." And they were amazing together. So she died, and he really fell apart. And it was only then, Nikki, that we discovered something we didn't know. He had Alzheimer's, and his memory was pretty badly affected. Why had none of us noticed? We spent several times a week with them. Their dance was so fluid. She'd fill in his words. She'd fill in his thoughts. We never heard the gaps. So grandmother's died. My granddad, we realized, has Alzheimer's. He deteriorates so rapidly. We eventually had him in care. I'd go visit him several times a week. I was back living on the island for about a year at that time between gigs and whatnot I was doing. And I would go visit him. Now, when he told the story of meeting my granny, he always said she had wavy blonde hair the first time I saw her, and she had eyes the color of the sea on a spring day. So I go see him. I'm around 30, 31 years old. And I have wavy blonde hair. I've got blue eyes, arguably the color of the sea on a spring day. And you know what happens? I walk in, and my granddad, whose memory's gone, he sees me, and he lights up like a Christmas tree. Wow. And he says, "Evie, you're here." And Nikki, something wiser than me made me say the right thing. I didn't say, "No, Granddad, Evie's gone. It's me, Cheryl." I said, "Yeah, Norm, I'm here." And he just settled, and his face softened, and he slept. And I sat with him, and he knew he was with his love again. The moral of the story is this: don't tell me the thrill can't last forever. The thrill can last through the death of your spouse when you're 86. The thrill can last through the devastating ravages of Alzheimer's, that when a lookalike to your beloved walks in the room and you think it's her, through all of that cognitive decline, you still light up like a Christmas tree. The thrill can last forever, Nikki. It just needs a little help, and I'm here to help.
Cheryl, it's been amazing having you here. We'll have to pick this conversation up next time. God bless you.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. To find out more about today's amazing guest, the one and only Cheryl Fraser, check out the show notes at thethoughtleaderrevolution.com or wherever you happen to listen to this episode. Until next time, goodbye.
This episode has been brought to you by eCircleAcademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.